Hi, I'm Zoe with Paranormal Extraction. Welcome to my show. We have something different on today. We have cattle mutilations, the unspeakable truth. Now, I have Russell Bringiger on, and that's not how you pronounce his last name, but I'm going to leave it like that today because you guys know that I don't edit anything. I also want to let you know that we did this ad on cattle mutilations, and we both got knocked off of Facebook for 2 days and TikTok and everywhere else on this very subject. So I had to make another stupid ad for Facebook. All right, I just thought I'd let you know. All right, Russell Vinegar. Hi, hey, Russell, how are you today? I'm so excited about our topic, cattle
Good.
mutilations. So, let's go ahead and start in with them. I mean, you have so many great topics that you want to talk about, but I mean, we talked for a long time about this, and I was so excited that we got you on early, which is great. And I just want to say thank you for coming on. And let's start talking about this strange phenomenon. Um,
Okay.
I'm a
So,
I'm 100% believer. Okay, but
mm,
let's hear why. Okay.
okay, it might be helpful to give just a short synopsis or background of how I even got into this, because prior to August 18th of 2009, I was in the hard science category. You know, there's no UFOs, no cryptids, no life after death, nothing. And then on August 18th, 2009, I had a heart attack in my yard trying to mow my grass.
Mm-hmm.
And during this period of time, I encountered what people call the other side. And I was suddenly in the presence of several ethereal beings. And I was given a choice whether to continue in this existence or go ahead and cross over. The information came through that they were there for me if I wanted to cross over at that time, or I could stay living in my physical life. So I made a quick decision to stay because I thought it would be really cool to keep living in three dimensions, knowing that there is something after this world. So I drove myself to the hospital, and to make a long story short, I got a couple of stents put in, and I was good to go. But I spent the next few years trying to figure out what in the heck happened to me.
Wow.
It kind of
Yeah.
changed my whole worldview. And I started reading quite a bit about anything paranormal. I started out with ghosts and it moved into cryptids. And I
Right.
eventually realized that it took me about 3 years of reading, but I finally realized that the UFO phenomenon was real, that it
Right.
wasn't just people's imagination or misidentified natural phenomenon or anything like that. And then the cattle mutilations were just part of the bigger story of the UFO phenomenon.
Right.
So that's how I got into that. And I know there's a lot of different opinions about what's going on with the cattle mutilations, but what I'd like to do is just go over a little information and then people can make up their own mind. We There are indications that the cattle mutilation phenomenon goes back into antiquity. And one of my favorite authors, Charles Fort, who lived back in the early 1900s, actually documented several events, cattle mutilation events, in the 1800s and the 1900s. So there's really no telling how long this has been going on.
Right. And a lot of people think that this has just happened like recently, not recently, but like started in the 1960s. Okay.
Right.
So you've done enough research to where you went all the way back, finding out that this cattle mutilation actually started in the 1800s, as far as you could find.
As far as literature goes, yeah, it may go back beyond that. And there's a lot of reasons why somebody could come upon a cow and find it like that. And the people that ascribe to the natural explanation will say things like dehydration and, you know, where the skin splits and it looks like a surgical wound. But the problem with that natural phenomenon event is that sometimes the cows were seen the very night before, so there's just not enough time for this to occur. And the typical presentation, it's not only with cows, but with sheep, rabbits, dogs, a variety of animals, but I guess the cows are the biggest, so that's the most visible.
Well, yeah, and so the ranchers, I mean, you were just saying, there's no way it could just happen overnight or something like that, because the ranchers would be out moving their cattle around, or they're doing whatever that day with them, so they would see them, of course, and then the next morning, they'd go out and see this.
Right. So it happens pretty rapidly. And typically, an eye will be removed, the tongue is surgically removed, a lot of the jaw tissue is removed, the sex organs are removed. So there's very specific tissues. If it were predators, it would be really ragged wounds and there'd be blood all over the place. But the cows are found in a desanguinated condition where there's absolutely no blood. They've discovered that the insides are mushy and pink, indicating that were possibly irradiated. So, and since if it was military helicopters, that's one theory is that this is done by the military. There's a fellow named Greg Valdez, whose dad was Gabe Valdez, and he was the investigator back in the 70s. And they were saying that this is all being done by humans and that they had an interest in people believing that it was aliens to cover up military operations. And, there's a lot of reasons why that can't really be the case. Um, in the mid 70s, it started out with a horse named Snippy back in 1967. That's a famous case where the entire neck was removed and the eye was removed. And then more and more reports came in.
But they were also bloodless.
Yeah, they're bloodless. That's
Yeah.
decontamination. It's bloodless.
Right.
There's
There was no blood.
There's no human footprints, no tire tracks, no evidence that there's any human activity whatsoever. And a lot of the cows are found with broken bones or even draped over rocks or fences with broken bones, broken ribs, indicating that they were dropped. So there are those who say, the ones that ascribe to the military operation say the helicopters come in and use some sort of harness to lift them up, but in most cases, there's no markings on the cow. If a 1,400-pound cow was lifted in the air, you'd have markings on the body where the harness was, and there's nothing like that. Plus, the surgical incisions are beyond the technology that we're aware of, anyway, of the U.S. military, because it actually is a laser-like cut that cuts in between the cells. So there's a lot of indications that there's no way, with the thousands of reports, that the military's flying in a Chinook helicopter and lifting the cow up in the air, doing their thing and dropping it back down on the ground.
Right.
Now, there are cases where they have found military scalpels left in the area. So I kind of have the opposite view that this is being done by non-human intelligence, and they've actually took really good pictures of the creatures that are behind this.
Well, yeah, those are the ones I was putting on the ad, and then we both got kicked off of Facebook.
Right. The pictures that the ranchers are taking are just of luminous blobs that seem to have appendages of some sort that come out and do their thing. There's a really good incident in Brazil called the Chupa Chupa wave that Dr. Jacques Vallée investigated, and this was where luminous orbs were coming up out of a body of water in Colares, Brazil, and turning into what looked like a flying saucer and actually chasing people and drawing blood from them. And there's lots of pictures online of the puncture marks that these things left. So apparently, if they want to leave the victim alive, they'll just be left with puncture marks and they'll have blood removed. But if they don't care if the victim dies, then they'll be dropped from a levitated state, possible broken bones, and completely desanguinated. And there's other indications. They found out that the cows are actually being marked with a magnesium potassium powder. And they've done chemical analysis on this and found 25 organic elements within it. So the powder that they're actually marking the cows with have organic elements in it, which indicates that we're talking about some sort of non-human living creature of some sort that's doing this. So all evidence indicates that the cows are being paralyzed or tranquilized and irradiated so that their insides are soft and mushy and levitated into the air. And then the blood is extracted either through some osmotic process. Osmosis is where you push a liquid through a semi-permeable membrane, and if the insides are irradiated and mushy, then the blood could be drawn out through the pores in the skin and taken up into a bladder of some sort inside the creature. And there's a fellow named Trevor James Constable back in the 60s that used infrared photography, and he called them sky creatures. And he suspected even back then that they were the ones conducting the cattle mutilations. But about the best source that I ran into was Linda Moulton Howe's
Now
book.
she's who I followed on this. I mean,
That's what it looks like.
yeah,
I was lucky enough to get a
she was a journalist. She started off as a journalist and a journalist on this particular subject, and then she became like the number one person
right.
to go to on this. Can you show that book again?
Yeah, this is what the book looks like. I was lucky to get a hardcover version.
Let's
but
see.
There's sellers on Alien that Amazon that want $300 for this book.
Oh, forget it. Yeah, because that was one of the first ones she wrote.
But can you see the photographs on this?
Yeah.
This is on page 37, I believe. And there's several photographs of what the ranchers actually took of what these creatures actually look like.
Right. Do you have any photos of what the cows look like? I mean, you know.
Oh, there's lots of photos in Linda's book with the
cow. Yeah, that's, if you have any photos of that, that's what I want to show. You know, like the one we did for the ad, where it's just absolutely.
This is what it looks like.
Yeah,
right here.
One of them. Do you have the one of the butt? The one where the incision, you can absolutely see that the incision is definitely not. Yeah. Drop it down a little. Yeah. Anyways, if anyone wants to see these, all they have to do is go on online and put in cattle mutilations, and you guys can see all of the pictures. Okay. Right. So yeah, I know. So Linda Moulton House started getting into this, and then that's when it became like this big thing. Okay. And that's where then they had everyone come in and say, oh, it could have been done this way or it could have been done that way, like you said. But from your research and the research that she did, this is not of our world. This is something that they want for whatever strange reason. I'm not really sure. What is your hypothesis on that?
The interesting thing about the modern wave of cattle mutilation, starting in 1967 and going up to the late 70s, where it became epidemic along the 37th parallel. If you put a pin in the border of Virginia and North Carolina and take it all the way to California, that's the 37th parallel going across. So UFO sightings coincided with the cattle mutilations all across that one latitude, the 37th parallel. So this is all occurring at the same time. In 1961, you have the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, and from that point,
now, excuse me, I didn't mean to. I don't want to, screw you up or anything. But Betty and Barney Hill, if anyone wants to know about, it's a very famous case. And you guys can find them. Also, go online about the case of their abductee experience. That is like the number one, real one. Who was it? Come on, Russell, the guy who did it in '67, the files. What was it called? Our favorite guy. You don't remember? '67. Come on, our show that was on.
Leonard Stringfield or
oh,
the psychiatrist that dealt with them. But since the Betty and Barney abduction incident, thousands of abduction narratives have come out, and they also became epidemic in the 70s and 80s. So there's one researcher, Dr. David Jacobs, who concludes that since he put people under hypnosis to get his abduction narratives, and this is all happening at the same time of the cattle mutilation epidemic. So Dr. David Jacobs concluded that this was a hybridization program, that the cattle mutilations had something to do with the abductions since they were going on simultaneously. And there's two different perspectives of that if the hybridization program is in fact going on. And that's Dr. David Jacobs' perspective is kind of foreboding. He thinks it's an alien takeover and he doesn't think it's a good thing. And there's other people that believe that this is an intervention into human genetics because of our tendency to destroy ourselves. Apparently, when we dropped the first atom bomb in 1945, the flying saucers came out of the woodwork. You know, it started with Kenneth Arnold sighting, and then it just exploded all over the world. People were reporting these flying saucers. And there's many incidents of flying saucers or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, showing up at nuclear facilities.
Oh yeah, they actually. I just want to say that who I was talking about is Project Blue Book. Okay, Hynek.
Okay.
His name is Hynek. Yes. Okay. So
yeah.
Yeah. So you're telling me that they wanted to take. So you're saying that there was some type of okay, right after the nuclear bomb went off, right? Not that wasn't the only event. I mean, they actually went into another site, right? And they shut the whole thing down.
Right, that was Maelstrom in 1967. Robert Salas was in charge there, and he's written a book called Faded Giant, where he explains that entire incident where a UFO showed up and they shut down the capability of their Minuteman missiles. But
Yes.
he wrote another book called Unidentified and indicated that these incidents were happening in Russia. There's about a dozen of these incidents of nuclear facilities in various countries where the UAPs show up and demonstrate, for whatever their reasons are, that they have control over the equipment.
Yeah. That's for whatever reason. I mean, I guess that's an intervention to show us that they're boss or that they don't want us to do this, have these for the world. I mean, I
Yeah,
have
those are the two basic interpretations. One is
right.
floating and paranoid. You know, they're showing their dominance.
Yeah,
And
paranoid.
just showing a gentle reminder that they're not going to allow a thermonuclear exchange to happen. So there are some modern abductees like Jim Moroni and 30-year veteran LA reporter Philip Kraft who say that this is an intervention of some sort. So there are those in the camp that the hybridization program is a genetic improvement, and they'll point to children being born with extremely high IQs, like crystal children, indigo children, that the species Homo sapiens sapiens is actually being transformed into a new species. And this has likely happened before. Prior to 2 million years ago, there was just Australopithecines, a little bipedal monkey-like creature with a brain the size of an orange. And then about 2 million years ago, it transforms into a much taller creature called Homo habilis or Homo erectus. Now, Homo erectus walked this earth for 1.8 million years with just one piece of technology. So there are those who think they were telepathic and they were very peaceful, traveling in clans, eating fruits and vegetables or whatever. But around 2 to 300,000 years ago, somehow or another, Homo erectus was displaced by Homo sapiens. And there are those like Dr. Arthur David Horn, who wrote Humanity's Extraterrestrial Origins, that think this had to have been an extraterrestrial intervention. Because to go from Homo erectus to Homo sapiens required too much code deleted expertly to happen in such a quick period of time.
Yeah, well, I don't. Okay, so I don't understand. I mean, what does that have to do with cattle mutilations?
What has to do with the fact that the cattle mutilations are tied in with the alien abductions, and that this may be some sort of extraterrestrial intervention to improve the human race or change the human race genetically.
Okay.
And that this happened before.
Okay.
It happened between Homo erectus and Homo
sapiens. Okay, I get it.
And it may be happening again to Homo sapiens sapiens, which is our current species. And It's been called Homo deus, Homo noeticus, Homo synthilectus,
Wow.
some improved species of humanity. Now, one of the things that I tied in all of this to is the oncoming technological singularity. In fact, I even suspect that, like John Keel, that Homo sapiens sapiens may actually be a biological robot that's actually a what they call a self-replicating von Neumann probe, where an alien race has engineered humans to be competitive and violent for one purpose, and that's to expedite technology. So in 2016, I actually wrote my own book, Overlords of the Singularity. That's
Yeah,
a
we're
book.
gonna have our own another show with about that book.
Right.
Um, okay, so what I wanted to also bring up that I know that they call it the cattle mutilation. Anyways, so I want to talk about the my favorite of all favorites is a Dyatlov Pass
Okay.
incident that has happened. Now that ties into the cattle mutilations.
Right. There's
And that's a very famous case. I mean, you can go online, you can find out everything. It's the truth, okay? It is the truth, except for, and then Russia was going to open the case again, I think last year or 2 years ago. And because everyone wants to know what happened to these people, it's similar to cattle mutilations, okay? It's exactly almost the same. And they closed the case and said, well, we still don't know what it is. Well, obviously they do, and they don't want for us to know, and it's a government cover up. What's your thoughts on that incident that happened? You think it's the same as the cattle mutilation thing?
well, there's a lot of people that are making theories about what happened to the hikers, and this was a group of hikers in Datlow Pass in the
Yes.
Ural Mountains, and they actually cut themselves out of their tent and walked down the hill barefoot, and then
Yeah.
they were found dead in various places. But it's been written off to local indigenous peoples killing them or an avalanche. But
Yeah.
what they actually covered up, and this is just now coming to light, is that some of number one, there was orange spheres reported in the skies that night, which is the same report as a lot of the cattle mutilations, where the ranchers take these photographs of the creatures. And another thing is that the bodies were found to have unusual levels of radiation in them,
Yes.
and the one or two of them had been mutilated in the same fashion as the cows.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most disturbing aspect of the cattle mutilation phenomenon is it's not limited to animals. There's a famous case that you can find online at the Guaraparanga Dam in Brazil. I believe it was around 1997, where a human being was actually mutilated in the same fashion
Oh,
as the,
really? Really? I
yes,
don't know about that one. But
yeah,
the Dyatlov Pass. I mean, if you look at those photos, and they also, you got to remember, I know you said they cut themselves out of the tent, but they were, okay, in the middle of going on a hike and all this snow below zero temperature, right? There was like 6 or 7 of them, but they were found like without their clothes on,
right, yeah,
okay?
like,
Out in the middle of snow all over the place. And it's like, and there's one woman in particular that they really did a number on.
right. Yeah, they were panicked and running out in the snow barefoot, afraid of something.
Right, right. Okay. Well, anyways, I can move on from that, but I could do a whole show on that.
Yeah, so there's indications. You've got the Detlow Pass, the Guaraparanga Dam incident, and there's a policeman, I forget his name, but for a while he was going on the UFO circuit, revealing buried police files all over the world where humans are done in exactly the same way. So the whole idea that humans are behind this is not viable, I don't
No,
think, because,
absolutely not.
yeah.
No
So,
way. No way. I mean, come on. Let's just take them up for instance again. I mean, it's the what happened is, it's inconceivable. You can't. There's no way what happened to them could happen.
Right.
Okay. You know, a Yeti couldn't do it. Okay. Surgically, the way they had it. Then they talked
Right.
about radiation, Russian testing. Okay. None of that it doesn't all come together as a whole. So it had to be, you know, a UAP, UFO, or something that we don't really know.
Right, and it remains unknown if these creatures have an intelligence of their own and they're doing it for their own reason, or if there's some sort of advanced technology used by another layer of intelligence in the UFO phenomenon for their purposes. And I sort of lean in that direction, that it's a technology that's being used to extract the soft tissue and extract the blood that's being used for whatever they're doing. And my personal suspicion is that there are extraterrestrial populations who are very engaged in populating other worlds. And Earth is kind of a petri dish with a lot of different life forms that would really be an oasis for the terraformers, you know, people who are non-humans who are into genetically modifying what exists here on Earth to transport to other planets. So there could be a project that's going on right here on Earth, the hybridization program or whatever, because bovine blood is very similar genetically to human blood, and bovine blood is also used in vitro fertilization procedures. So it's a very feasible thing to think that they're using the bovine blood to manipulate human genetics in some fashion. Plus, you've got all these abduction stories where pregnant women are all of a sudden not pregnant
Oh
anymore.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So the two prominent researchers, Bud Hopkins and Dr. David Jacobs, concluded that since the cattle mutilations and human mutilations are done in conjunction with the abduction, that they have something to do with each other. So there's a project going on that involves human beings, and it's unknown whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Right. Right. Well, it makes sense to me, about like you're saying, you know, genetic modification. I think you said, is that what you said? And taking the DNA or whatever to make their own species. You were talking about even plants. I mean, actually, I have had an interview with a couple of people about UFOs, the terraforming and all of that. That actually is. It doesn't come from the cattle mutilations or anything to do with that, but that is what they're doing, and that is, what's going on.
Yeah. Charles Fort book, the Book of the Damned, just has one incident after the other where there's like incidents of worms being dropped within an 18-inch wide strip for 30 feet. You know, like they were just being dumped out of the back of an aerial vehicle.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
And if you combine that with the USOs, the underwater
Yeah.
UAPs,
Yeah.
yeah,
The submergible objects,
yeah, it's quite
unidentified submergible objects. I think.
right. It's quite possible that the operations are going on underground here on Earth or undersea or off planet, one of the three.
Yeah. So that's your consensus of. I mean, obviously, you're extremely intelligent on this subject. I mean, that from reading, I mean, an ungod amount of books on this and doing the research that you have done, that is your conclusion on what's going on.
Yeah, there's a deeper level of that. There's a fellow named Robert Temple who wrote the book on the Sirius mystery about the Dogon tribe that was aware of Sirius B when they shouldn't have been able to know anything about that. He just wrote a new book called A New Science of Heaven and explains that 99% of this universe is what scientists are calling dark matter, but he concludes that it's a plasma universe, that most of the reality that we're dealing with is plasma, and the material reality, the part that we're embedded in, is just the tip of the iceberg of a much larger reality that consists of plasma. So you're talking about intelligences that exist in a plasma universe that occasionally intervene into material reality once in a while. because the UAPs that are conducting the cattle mutilations are primarily invisible until they get to the spot where they're going to operate. Then they become briefly visible as kind of a
Yeah.
flash of light or
Yeah.
these things that they're capturing on. And then the next day they find out that the cattle's are mutilated. So they intervene into this reality briefly, and it's very deceptive in some ways because
Yeah.
a lot of the a lot of the ranchers are reporting black helicopters associated with the cattle mutilations.
Well, it's
And
because, what's going on is the government doesn't want us to know, as usual. Here we go, another conspiracy theory, right? Is what they're saying, that they
well,
are involved. That's what I just read. I just read something new about that, about the government, doing this, and something I read just like within the last 2 weeks.
there's a particular type of black unmarked helicopter that has a bright light in the cockpit, and there's no way a human pilot could be in there. So apparently, these UAPs, whatever they are, can morph into something more conventional. They can morph
Interesting.
into an airline. They can morph into
Wow.
an airplane, a commercial or private airplane.
Right.
So we can't always believe what we're seeing because there is a clandestine element of this whole operation underfoot where they don't really want human beings to know exactly what's going on. It could be for our own good, or it could be, that some sort of malfeasance is in the air. Depends on the way you look at it.
Yeah, right. Well, very interesting topic. You finished off with something new that, wow, I haven't heard of at all, which is really interesting about the plasma situation. But as far as you talking about them coming down, you can't really see what's going on. They can call that multidimensional too, right?
Right. I mean, when they're interacting with a physical cow,
Right,
apparently they become temporarily visible.
right. And then,
Kinda. It's like they're
yeah,
almost there, but they're not. So
right,
yeah, we're probably dealing with an interdimensional phenomenon,
yeah,
or something from the plasma universe that intersects into the material world. Plasma, according to Temple, is made from incomplete atoms with electrons, protons, and ions. And plasma exists in our sun, in stars, and various clouds out in outer space. So the main reality that we're dealing with is a plasma universe, according
right.
to Temple,
That's what you're
and
saying.
this is just kind of like an offshoot of the universe, this material reality that we find ourselves in.
Wow. Okay, that's a new one we didn't talk about, but wow. Okay. So, I mean, amazing stuff that you just said. It all makes sense. I don't know how anyone can just say, once they look at those pictures, okay, or do a little research on it, can say, oh, that this, it is, just somebody coming in, and a surgeon, they even said, okay, a surgeon could do it. I mean, what is a surgeon going to do, Russell? Go out in the middle of the farm and go find a cow and cut all this stuff out. You really see that happening?
No,
So, anyways, but thank you so much. And you are coming on for another interview because you are an author. So, show everyone your book so they know what you're going to be talking about next.
the
And
book's called Overlords of the Singularity, and it's available on Amazon. It's 545 pages of information. It started out as notes when I first got into the UFO phenomenon after my near-death experience in '09. I was naive enough to think that I could collect all the classic cases, and then
yeah,
I soon discovered that there was thousands upon
yeah,
thousands. So
right.
I stopped at 545
Oh my
pages.
God, yeah. So, and that's a really good book. And if anyone wants to know anything about Russell, okay, just send me an email or a text or anything like that, or I can answer you just right on YouTube or Facebook. So, Russell, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having
And
me. It's fun.
yeah, I just love the subject, and I'm gonna love the subject matter we're gonna talk to later down the road. So I just want to let everybody know that thank you for watching, and check it out. Check those pictures out. All right. So I'm going to say goodbye to you, Russell. All right.
Bye.
Thanks again for having you on.
Okay,
Bye
adios.
bye.